Bond analysis and valuation. Bond analysis and valuation is the formal process of estimating of bond pairs value by discounting its effective future cash flows such as coupon payments and face value using a rate that reflect market conditions and the bond's risk levels. Characteristic of bonds analysis and valuation. Lies is understanding and applying discount cash flow analysis to determine the fair value of bond. This involves calculating the present value of the future coupon payments and the face value of the bond and maturity, discounted at an appropriate rate reflection market interest rates and the bond risk. Two main approaches. Yield to maturity is the total return an investor can expect to receive if they hold a bond until the matures, including all interest payment and the face value of maturity. Second is spot rate discounting. It is a method of calculating the present value of future cash flows using the specific spot rates for each cash flow's maturity date. Yield to maturity formula. PM is equal to current market price to bond. N is the number of years to maturity. C, the annual coupon payment for bond I. And I is the prevailing yield to maturity for this bond issue. PF is equal to the fair value of the bond. Example, the value compute indicates what can investors would be willing to pay for these bonds to realize a rate of return that takes into account expectations regarding the RFR, the expected rate of inflation, and the rest of the bond. The standard valuation technique assumes holding the bond to its maturity. In this case, the number of periods would be the number of the year to the maturity of the bond, referred to as its term to maturity. And the cash flow include all the periodic interest payment and the payment of the bond's par value at the maturity. We can demonstrate this formula using 8% coupon bonds that matures in 20 years with a par value of US dollar 1,000. Therefore, an investor who holds this bond to maturity will receive US dollar 40 pesos every 6 months, one half of the US dollar 80 pesos coupon for 20 years, and the 40 periods and the US dollar 1,000 at the maturity of the bond in 20 years. If we assume a yield to maturity of the bonds of 10%, the market's required rates to return on the bond value using equation 18.1 would be: the first terms in the present value of an annuity of US dollar 40 pesos every 6 months for 40 periods at 5%, while the second item is the present value of US dollar 1,000 to be received in 40 periods at the 5%. This can summarize as follows. Present value of the interest payment, US dollar 40 pesos times 17.1591 is equal to US dollar 686.36, and the present value of the principal payment for US dollar 1,000 times 0.1420 is equal to 142.00. The total value of the bond of the 10% is equal to US dollar 828.36 pesos. As expected, the bond will be priced at the discount to its par value because the market's required rate of the return of the 10% is greater than bond coupon rate, that is US dollar 828.36 pesos or 82.836% of par. Alternatively, if the market's required rate was 6%, the value would be computed as the present value of the annuity. At 3% for 40 periods, the present value of the principal at 3% for 30 periods as follow. Present value of interest payment US dollar 40 pesos times 23.1148 is equal to 924.59, and then the present value of the principal payment US dollar 1000 times 0.3066 is equal to 306.60 pesos. The total value of the bond at 6% is equal to US dollar 1,231.19 pesos. Because the bond's discount rate is lower than coupon, the bond would be still at premium above par value, that is 1.231.19 or 123.119 of par. Spot rate discounting example. The price yield curve, when you know the basic characteristics of bonds in terms of coupon maturity and the par value, and the only factor that determines of the value price. In the market, discount rate is required rate of return as we increase the required rate, the price declines. We can demonstrate the specific relationship between the price of the bond and its yield by computing the bond price range to yield as shown exhibit. So exhibit price yield relationship for 20 years 8% coupon bonds for US dollar 1,000 par value. So ang yang required yield niya to pag-abot sa price of bond is US dollar 1,985.09 pesos. Ang kadua niya nga required yield is 4, pag-abot sa price of bond is 1,547.12. Ang ikatulo niya nga required yield is 6, pag-abot sa price of bond is 1,231.19, and then required yield niya nga 8 is pag-abot sa price of bond is 1 million, and then required yield niya nga 10, pag-abot niya sa price of bond is 828.36. Ang yung required yield nga 12, pag-abot sa price of bond is 699.05. Ang yung required yield nga 14, pag-abot sa price of bond is 600.07. Ang last nga required yield is 16. Pag-abot sa price of bond is 522.98.